Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Nanny Faye says zero room for friends in healthy marriage. Nanny Faye was a special guest on Lindsay Chrisley's most recent episode of her podcast, The Southern Tea. Early on in their conversation, Lindsay admitted that she got a lot of really helpful marriage advice from her grandmother. She even recalled leaning on her grandmother for support when her marriage came to an end. As fans will recall, it wasn't until Lindsay's marriage ended that she found her way back to Todd and her stepmother Julie. But hearing Lindsay and Nanny Faye talk on the podcast, it is becoming apparent that Nanny remained in contact with Lindsay the same way she did with Kyle when Todd cut him off. After talking a bit about Lindsay's marriage and their relationship, Nanny Faye proceeded to give her granddaughter's listeners some helpful marriage advice. Nanny Faye tells Lindsay the biggest mistake people make is not focusing enough time and attention on their marriage. She explains that a married woman with children, a home, and a husband just doesn't have time to be spending with friends. Nanny Faye explained that if a good woman is working on her marriage, raising her children, and taking care of her house, then there just isn't any extra time in the day for friends. So, one of the best things a woman can do for the sake of a healthy marriage, family, and household is to cut her friends loose. She clarified that you will always have your friends that you go to in your time of need. But married women don't have time for someone to come over daily to grab some tea and chit-chat. Nanny Faye admitted the last thing she wanted while managing a household and working on marriage was for someone to regularly come over for a cup of tea or coffee and some conversation. Lindsay Chrisley's grandmother went on to warn her that too many friends also spell trouble as they increase the risk of her man stepping out on her. Lindsay couldn't help but chuckle at her grandmother's reasoning. Fans weren't too keen on this advice. On Reddit, fans admit they appreciated the respectful way that Lindsay listened to everything her nanny had to say and every piece of advice she had to give even if it wasn't necessarily the best piece of advice. While fans love Nanny Faye, they weren't necessarily on board with this advice. In fact, most agree it was pre-old school advice from a generation when things were different than they are now. So, fans aren't sure the advice would really hold well in today's society. If there's one thing fans know about the Chrisley family matriarch, it's that Nanny Faye never hesitates to speak her mind. Whether she's joking about her love of slot machines or throwing shade at Todd's bougie lifestyle, she always delivers her thoughts with a mix of humor, grit, and Southern wisdom. But in a surprising turn, Nanny Faye has opened up about her views on marriage, sparking debates, laughter, and a fair bit of eyebrow-raising when she declared, "There is zero room for friends in a healthy marriage." At first glance, her comment seemed more like one of her classic quips, something you'd expect her to say while sipping sweet tea on the porch. But as she explained herself, the depth behind her reasoning painted a vivid picture of how she sees loyalty, commitment, and the true nature of partnership. The setting: a family chat gone deep. It started casually enough. Savannah had her podcast microphone set up in her living room, and Nanny Faye, in her favorite leopard print blouse, was lounging in the background, offering her 2 cents. The topic had veered into relationships, especially with Savannah navigating her own complicated love life and looking to her grandmother for advice. "Granny, what's the secret to a lasting marriage?" Savannah asked. Without missing a beat, Nanny Faye leaned forward, eyes twinkling, and delivered the now viral line. "Baby, a healthy marriage don't leave room for no friends. That's dead weight, and it'll sink your ship." Savannah blinked. Chase, who was listening in, immediately burst out laughing. But Nanny wasn't smiling. Her voice carried that mix of seriousness and sass that made everyone hush. Her logic? A marriage is its own friendship. To Nanny Faye, the idea of friends in a marriage doesn't mean you can't have companions outside your relationship. What she meant was deeper, that the closest friendship you'll ever need should be with your spouse. You marry somebody, you best be their best friend, their partner in crime, their confidant, their playmate, and their prayer buddy all rolled into one, she explained. You start leaning too heavy on your outside friends, well, that means you're leaving cracks in your marriage. And honey, cracks, of course, were her colorful way of describing temptations, jealousy, gossip, or even just the slow erosion of intimacy when outside voices grow louder than the one you vowed to love. Todd, who later chimed in via phone, teased her. Mama? Are you saying Julie and I should have never had any friends? Nanny shot back, you? With friends? Todd, your only real friend is that mirror in your bathroom. Everyone roared with laughter, but her message still stood strong. Fans react. Debate erupts. As soon as the clip hit social media, Chrisley fans began weighing in. Some applauded Nanny's stance, saying they agreed wholeheartedly that a marriage thrives when partners make each other their priority. One fan wrote, Nanny Faye just spoke the truth. Your spouse should be your ride or die, not your side option when friends aren't around. But others argued her take was too extreme. Friendships are vital for healthy individuals. Another fan countered. If you put all your eggs in one marital basket, you risk burnout and resentment. Friends give balance. Still, Nanny wasn't backing down. Personal history shapes her view. Her perspective stems from lived experience. Nanny Faye has often hinted at the heartbreaks and struggles she's endured, raising her kids and standing by her late husband. Through thick and thin, she learned that outside friends, especially those who meddled in personal business, can sometimes do more harm than good. Back in my day, she explained, your business stayed in your house. You didn't run to friends every time your man forgot to take out the trash or pay a bill late. You worked it out inside your four walls. If you didn't, next thing you know, your so-called friend is whispering in his ear or telling you to leave him. That ain't loyalty. That's poison. Her words carried the weight of someone who had seen friendships turn into wedges and confidences turn into competitors. The generational divide. Of course, Savannah and Chase pushed back, pointing out that modern relationships thrive on balance, therapy, and sometimes leaning on friends for advice. Granny, it's not like we live in the 1960s anymore, Savannah argued. Having friends is normal. It helps you vent and not put everything on your partner. But Nanny Faye waved her hand dismissively. Baby, if you need to vent, you better take a walk or talk to God. If you spend all your time pouring your business into friends, what you leaving for your marriage? A half-empty cup. Chase jumped in with his usual mischief. So what you're saying, Granny, is if I get married, I gotta ditch all my golf buddies. You can golf with them, Nanny replied dryly. But don't you be telling them when your wife burnt the chicken. That's your little secret to love her through. Humor meets wisdom. Even though her opinion is a tough pill for some to swallow, Nanny's delivery softens it. She sprinkles in metaphors, humor, and the kind of down-home sayings that make her advice sound more like storytelling than lecturing. Marriage is like a slot machine, she said with a sly grin. You keep pulling that lever, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but the jackpot only comes if you stick with your own machine. If you start playing all the other machines in the casino, well, don't expect to hit gold at home. That analogy, unsurprisingly, got a huge laugh from Chrisley fans who know about her gambling trips. But the truth underneath it resonated. Focus your attention, loyalty, and energy on your partner, not on outsiders. Broader lessons. Beyond the soundbite, Nanny Faye's message touches on the deeper need for boundaries. Friendships are valuable, but when they begin to rival or undermine the intimacy of a marriage, they can destabilize it. Her words serve as a reminder to prioritize communication with one's spouse, to guard against oversharing, and to treat marriage as the sacred space it is meant to be.